Sure. So my name is Brad Grossman, as you know. I'm the founder of Zeitguide, as you know. I'm doing this new product that I've created a year ago called Culture Class, where everybody joins me on Zoom video, and I basically help you navigate all the leading edge issues and bubbling trends each week within these four big buckets of change. We talk about global trends, we talk about tech trends, we talk about consumer trends, and we talk about workplace trends within the rubric of a big overarching theme. And right now, today, we know that the big theme is coronavirus, the impact and its impact on society. And the agenda for today, and we'll just go over it quickly, is that number one, I've been doing this for 3 weeks as a free version, and I'm so grateful that all of you have hopped on. And I want to talk about how the cultural narrative has evolved since the last time we had talked. Then I'm going to talk about tailwind and headwind businesses. What are the type of businesses that are succeeding right now and why? And the headwind businesses, tailwind, we probably haven't experienced that literally because we haven't been on planes, but tailwind makes you go faster and headwind basically bombards against you to prevent you from moving forward. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then I've been having this new segment for a culture class, which I call the Hearts and Minds segment. And every week, I find an expert in a different field to help us illuminate what they're going through and what they're learning, and to provide some insight into our worlds. Even if we're not in their particular industry, we probably could connect with them both on a human level and also on an industry level, because we are all being disrupted by this completely, I call it a gothic object that's thrown into our lives and completely puts us into disarray like a horror movie. And hopefully at the end, we'll all live happy ever after, and the masked figure who kills everybody dies. So this week, and is Piers here? Piers? I hope he's not muted. Piers.
Hey, I'm here.
Hi, Piers. Say hi. So blessed to have you here, Piers. So Piers is the founder of a futuristic trend company, and you probably could talk about it a little bit more, called PSFK. He's actually been in existence for, you've been doing this for your entire career, and he is in the middle of his amazingly successful World Retail Innovation Week. Did I say it right?
That's right.
Great, thanks. And Piers Fawkes is basically going to tell us what he's feeling and learning in the retail space. And if we're in retail, great, we'll learn from him. If we're consumers, which we are, we'll learn from him. And if we're in any industry, we'll learn from him, because it's an industry that's navigating this chaos. And just as a leader, I think we'll all gain some insight. So thank you, Piers, for being here. Then I'm going to continue the theme that we talked about last week, which are, how do you communicate as a brand today? Because I know many of us are in consumer-facing businesses. If you're not in a B2C business and you're in a B2B business, a business-to-business business, you're still marketing yourselves and you're still connecting with customers. And what are like the tasteful ways to do it, and what are the tasteless ways to do it? And last week, I had my friend Michael Nyman come onto the show, who was the founder and then became the CEO and chairman of PMK, which was bought by IPG, the advertising media holding company. And we discussed and learned from him last week about how sensitive we have to be, but balanced with the fact that we have to still be present for our consumers, but how do you do it? And for our customers too. And I would say the takeaways that we learned is like, employees first. You need to really be there for your employee as a global leader, as somebody who tells them what's going on in the world. We're seeing many companies where employees are going on strike right now that really don't attend to that edict. And because of that, we're hearing horrible things about those particular companies. I see somebody on CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News, actually not, talking about their experiences at Amazon. So that's one way to be a great brand today. Number two is providing a service. And in your emails, which we don't want to get too many of, especially now, you're always going to be saying how we're helping restaurants in the age of COVID-19, and really providing a service. And then the third thing, everything you learn, you should be telling your customers and your consumers. I spoke to a client today who is in the furniture sales business, and we were talking about how she has her factory still open in Virginia. And because of that, she is continuing to do business, and all of our employees are happy. They're happy that they have jobs, and they're also happy that they are working within very safe environments. And so what she's doing is to communicate with her customers about what are the rules that she's learning to create the perfect safe workspace. So I'm going to continue with some examples of brands that are great and brands that are not great. And then at the end, like always, I'll give some inspirational, fun, pop cultural consumer trend stuff. And then we'll have a Q&A, and you could ask Piers anything. Now that I learned a little bit more about Zoom, you could put this all in the chats, and please ask me or Piers. And then I'm going to introduce our next hearts and minds expert who will be joining us next week. Okay, here we go. So everybody take a deep breath, because one of the things we always have to show is the horrific updates of what's happening right now. And so take a deep breath. Not the best of news, but we still need to be on that knowledge narrative. And the website that I always use to get what we need to know right now is New York Times. Look at that briefly. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not CNN. I'm not giving you dour breaking news. My job is to help you contextualize and keep you on this knowledge journey, and help you stay relevant to what's going on so that you can live through this in the best way possible. That's my goal, and I hope I'm doing that, or trying to. I hope I'm doing that. So just to start, the Wall Street Journal, talking about the first part of what we're doing, the opening context, basically said that this week is America's make or break week. And now I'm going to show how we had gotten here from last week. Obviously, it's the first week of April. Many of us have bills to pay, rent is due, mortgage is due. And I've seen definitely a cultural shift to what was happening last week to what has been going on this week. So in terms of evolving to this part one of Culture Class, I'm talking about the cultural narrative, which is evolving. So last week, there was great news that we all thought that retailers were offering 700,000 jobs to people during this crisis. And then today, or a few days ago, we're seeing all of these companies, whether it's Amazon or many other retailers, or Instacart, who are the employees are really stepping up and protesting Whole Foods about their fears of working in unsafe situations and not having their bosses, their employers, being completely transparent about who has the coronavirus and how they can be safe. The next thing that I thought was pretty fascinating was that, that's a little bit of inequality, is that before in Culture Class, leading up to today, we've been talking about the protests around the world. And, it started in terms of our knowledge in popular culture in Hong Kong, and it evolved into, I think, between 25 and 30 plus countries, whether it was India, Chile, Algeria, Zimbabwe, Paris, the Yellow Vests, and even Greta Thunberg, who, by the way, is basically now self-quarantining herself because she says from traveling all over the world protesting against climate change, she actually suspects that she has coronavirus right now. So one of the evolutions from even last week to today, that protesters are being, obviously demanded to not leave their homes. So these protests have been halted, have stopped in terms of protesting outside all over the world. However, many are basically stepping out of their homes. And I think in Brazil, you have people slamming pots and pans in protests. So even though they can't do it outside and do it immobilized like they were doing before, they are still protesting inside. I think women in Mexico, which I learned from Axios, which I just showed, basically on March 9th, to protest the violence against women, they held a day without women by staying inside their homes all day, quote, end quote. And, Mike Allen, who wrote this piece, who I'm a big fan of, the founder of Axios, which is one of the sources, because I know many people ask me what my sources are of information. Basically, he says, now the world has moved inside. It's the streets that are empty. So again, a cultural evolution from what has happened even last week to today. I think I showed last week how this self-quarantining has enabled us to have a lot more clarity. Look how beautiful we can see Venus right now because of the lack of pollution. Here we can see the difference between pollution in New York a year ago to today. And, I think I showed last week LA, which is insane. Here's LA. Look at the difference because of what's happening, which is great. But since then, look what happened. Basically, the administration announced that they're rolling back the rules that would prevent automobiles from polluting the air with disgusting, tailpipe exhaust. So look how, again, the cultural narrative has happened. Has evolved. Now, I would say last week, the week before, there were a lot of celebrities across social media who were like really excited about everything and trying to entertaining the world. There wasn't a tone of dourness. But right now we can see that there is more of a tone of advocacy. Here's Lizzo, who is an amazing R&B singer. I love her. And I don't know, I play her to make me happy right now, but look what she put on social media.
And it went like.
And then this is for a little bit of chuckle. But obviously, we're seeing the disparity between the haves and the have-nots through all this. And Cardi B, the hip-hop artist, let me make this a little bigger, talks about inequality in her post.
Hey guys, so I just wanna do this video, right? Long ass motherfucking video, and let y'all motherfuckers know something, right? Sometimes I get on my live and I be talking about crazy shit, entertaining my fans, and people might just take what I say and just run with it and say what the fuck it is. And I really wanna let these celebrities know, why the confusion that the general public have, right? And the questionings that the general public have. Because if number 45 is getting on a podium saying, hey, listen, if you do not have any symptoms of the coronavirus, which is coughing, fever, and whatsoever, etc., do not get tested, because we don't have enough testes to test everybody. But if a celebrity is saying, hey, listen, I don't have no symptoms, I'm feeling good, I feel healthy, I don't feel like nothing, but I went and got tested and I'm positive for the coronavirus, that caused confusion. That made people be like, well, wait a minute now. I don't have no symptoms, but I know I went out this and that day. Shit, I might just have it. Shit, I'm scared because I'm around my kid. I'm around my grandparent. What should I do? And let me tell you something. The general public, people that work regular jobs, people that get regular paychecks, the middle class, the, poor, whatever the crap, they're not getting treated like the high, you know, the ones that appear, like celebrities and everything, they're not getting their fucking coronavirus results the next day. That's one. The coronavirus is very much real. That's first.
All right, so I'm not going to play the whole thing, but inequality, as the New York Times so adroitly and carefully illuminated, the difference between many of us knowledge workers who are able to work remotely. Now, a lot of my peers and many on this call have lost a lot of business and have even lost their jobs. But we are working from home, whereas there was a survey by Lipsis today that came out that finds Americans who are less educated and make less money, lower incomes, are likely to have to keep showing up at their workplaces, which obviously put themselves at higher risk of infection. Whereas the information basically talked about, which is a tech a newsletter, a media company, talks about how there's a luxury villa where rich people can escape. They're saying they're virus-free retreats and everybody's hanging out, eating and drinking, but they just have to be 6 feet away. So Cardi B, way to go. All right, we're just gonna move on to the next section, which is tailwinds and headwinds. What are the businesses that are working and what are the businesses that are being challenged right now? And I guess when I go through this, I want you to ask yourselves, will this continue post-corona and where's the opportunity set? Now, I started my business in 2008. And that was the year of the financial collapse. And not only did I start my company because I saw a white space in terms of, wow, everything's so screwed up. How can I teach executives and their teams and other people through my Zeitguide platform about how our world is shifting and what they need to know? This was also the age between 2008 and 2012 where all the startup entrepreneurs who actually were millennials who graduated college and couldn't get any work created their own businesses by plugging in their computer and basically having the ability to start a business. So now is another epistemological shift in culture. So I encourage everybody to basically just sit back and think about, like, what are the businesses that I could work for or create on my own that we're really going to need as this crisis dissipates. I read somewhere that Clorox is developing many products where they can where they're going to have a whole slew of cleaning products, whether it's like playground wipes for your kids, door handles so that you could put on top of your door handles so that you don't get any type of sickness moving forward. We have seen Purell being such a hot commodity now, and look at all these companies, whether it's LVMH, who are doing it in their factories right now, or Kristen Soriano, the fashion designer, who are basically creating their own hand sanitizers. But these are the ways that we should be thinking. Now, the information, obviously I really get a lot of value from this, have actually said that there are some startups that are getting funding right now. For many of my peers who are in the startup community, they are really upset right now. They invested so much of their own money into their companies, and now they're losing all the investments that they were supposed to get. But some of the companies that just got some funding is Capsule. They just raised $270 million. And basically, they deliver medications right to your home. Makes sense why people would want to invest in that. Ethos basically is a company that's trying to help us all get insurance. It's an insurance technology startup. So very smart companies that are basically dovetailing in the current zeitgeist. Joya Communications, which is called Marco Polo, is a video chat app, and like Zoom. And Piers, I know you're on the call, but I actually have also saw an article, but I hope nobody's on right now, but there are a lot of, what are they, spammers? Or what's the term of people who just jump on and like disrupt?
Trolls.
Trolls, thank you. So, you know, Zoom, the stock is rising tremendously, but they are definitely going to be disrupted by other video chat apps. And I'm sure the behemoths like Microsoft, which has Skype, or Apple as FaceTime, will develop that into a bigger platform. Properly, basically, okay, so hopefully Airbnb will continue and grow after all this, but properly basically is managing home cleanings after the global pandemic. So we're going to need to clean our Airbnb spaces a lot more vigorously. And here's a company that's really taking which is really dovetailing with the zeitgeist. And Curiosity Stream, which has been around. John Hendricks, the founder of Discovery, he's been doing this for 5 years old, 5-year-old. I'm hoping to get a meeting. So if anybody knows him directly, you know, maybe Zeitguide could be a Curiosity program, but let's just move on. Now, there's another thing that I learned from the information as well, and other platforms, that Facebook just beat out Apple for this new AR technology company. And this to me shows that this is definitely going to catalyze, the coronavirus is going to catalyze this cultural movement higher in cultural clout. And the reason why I think that is because I actually saw Sheryl Sandberg years ago at the Vanity Fair Summit talk about why they are investing in virtual reality. They own Oculus because, like, the future of social media is, well, Oculus is VR, not AR. But anyway, we could talk about that another time, the difference. But VR is basically putting a helmet on your head and escaping into something, and AR is actually overlaying a fantastical image onto something two-dimensional into three-dimensional. And but this will enable us to really connect with people, not just from a two-dimensional screen, but, you know, more feeling like we're in the same room with each other. Other tailwinds that are happening right now: Powell Books brings back 100 of its laid off workers thanks to online orders. Great that we're all reading. Actually, drive-in movie theaters are making a comeback because of the coronavirus. So as long as your cars are 6 feet apart from each other, that could be a fun thing. And then obviously you're not going to be 6 feet, you know, you're with your family. Ones that aren't doing so well is the retail business, and we're going to talk more about that with Piers in a moment. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal today about how direct-to-consumer companies, subscription-based, like the Birchboxes of the world, or Chewy, which is the dog thing, or actually meals for dogs and people, are actually doing okay. I think I forgot, I think it's meal, I forgot what the one, but like these meal planning companies are actually doing pretty well right now. And, but, you know, the ones that you're subscribing to, like Rent a Runway, which we don't really need a beautiful Dior gown to go out right now, are being challenged. Sex toys too. There are some subscription box sex toy businesses, so they're not really doing so well right now. As people are trying to save up, and they're spending their subscription dollars to the Netflixes of the world. Existential threat for the news media because advertising is being cut, or brands aren't spending advertising dollars. I'm sure we don't have to worry about Facebook and Google, but they're losing over $44 billion in ad revenue. Podcast listening is going down, actually. I think I read a study, right now, that it's that some listenership has fallen 20% since March 19th. And mainly it's because we're not commuting or driving in our cars. Another one is obviously the co-op or the co-working spaces that we're not going to work, even though WeWork, which we know has been challenged in the last few months, is not having their is offering a $100 bonus to anybody who comes into work. And they actually say they can stay open because they get mail delivered and such services like that. So that is one of the required businesses that doesn't need to close shop right now. We talked about Rent a Runway. Another industry that I've been talking about before Corona is the re-commerce business, like Depop, if you knew about them, the Real Real. We already know about Rent a Runway, where you're renting things and you don't have to own things. And this was all great for the future retail because it reduced people's carbon footprints, right? They didn't have to buy a gazillion things in Uniqlo and other fast fashion things. They would be able to be connected with really good quality goods, right? Like an Hermes bag from like 15 years ago. And re-commerce basically was like the virtual vintage stores that would sell to people, and it was really, really popular. And people in the retail industry, I just worked with the Business of Fashion, which is another publication I really connect with. And there was a whole section, they just had a Voices Summit, and we were working on a piece which was all about re-commerce. And, but I think that's going to actually be a tailwind once this is all over, because everybody's cleaning out their closets. And last thing before we go to Piers, there's definitely a condom shortage going on right now. So, so there are the headwinds and the tailwinds right now. And now we're going to bring Piers on. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm going to promote you right now by showing everybody your Retail Innovation Week website. And here you go. And you could subscribe to all these amazing things. Yeah, totally excited that you're here and you're taking the time away from this very amazing thing that you're doing. And so let's talk, Piers. So last week we talked about branding. The week before we talked about geopolitics with an expert named DJ Peterson. And here we're talking about shopping, right? And you've been studying retail for so long, right? So what were you telling your clients as a retail futurist / trend guru that people have relied on you for so many years? What were you studying before and you were teaching everyone, whether it's through your platform or your clients? And, where did you think retail was going pre-corona? We don't hear you, Piers. Oh, unmute.
Yeah, there I go.
All right, Piers.
I like the fact I came on after the condom segment.
There's some, I mean, it's part of the retail conversation.
Great to be here, Brad. Great to see everybody and be with everybody. Thank you for giving me some time today, and hopefully I can share a few thoughts, provide a few ideas, which is hard after everything that you just downloaded us with. How your brain works scares me.
Well, it's a blessing and a curse, trust me.
So, hey, I'm calling from New York, not really upstate New York, but Hudson Valley, New York. Before, as an organization, we put out a report called the Future of Retail Report every year. It tries to talk about all the key trends that are taking place in retail and the larger themes. And this year we wanted to talk about this idea of personal utility, which is a kind of larger theme, or maybe the next step after all this experiential stuff had gone on. It was obvious that experiential was maybe not playing out, but had already gone through its hype cycle, or at least the first blip of its hype cycle. And, and there was a lot of kind of Me Too and poor experiences being applied out there. So what we realized is, there's really personal utility. It has two words. It obviously has two words. It relies on the idea of personalization and usefulness. So what we were beginning to see is how retailers and DTC brands could provide a custom level of service, support, curation for customers.
It's kind of like they were not only giving them, Piers, it wasn't like they were just giving them the product. They were also providing service or utility, like you said, for their lives. So it was like a responsibility.
Sure, we were tracking like homeware products. Like there's a homeware company, and I'll put up the URL in a second, where you would buy, it's like one of these new brands, you would buy the pots and pans, and it would come with 6 months of chatter chef advice. And so when you were cooking with one of these pots, or cooking at home in the evening, if you didn't know what to do, or you had a problem, or you forgot a recipe, or you forgot an ingredient, you could text these chefs and get feedback through chat then and there. And so you began to see this sort of meta level of service and support added to kind of fit as a plain old product like a cooking pot.
Mm. And so that was really exciting, right? And the way that there were so many amazing direct-to-consumer products that we could get, on Instagram or anywhere really. I mean, there were challenges. We talked about climate change. We talked about the fact that the big box stores or people they were all going to Amazon. We discussed this before. They all, the fast fashion was losing cultural acceptability. And every retailer was trying to figure out their omni-channel strategy, which, if you don't know, is connecting with your consumers online, offline. Experiences were the ways that retailers actually brought customers into the store. So now, obviously, we know that all the stores, including Apple, are closed, except for the grocery stores, the pharmacies, and the wine shops. And the pop places too, I hear, in LA. But what is the impact that you think this is going to? Yeah. And it could go in several ways. We might not know, but
yeah, all I can do is respond with some of the insights from the conversations I've had this week. So the Retail Innovation Week site that Brad kindly puts up is an e-festival that I put together. It took about 9 days to put it together. I have about 100 speakers sharing ideas. Some of them run startups, some of them work at larger organizations like MasterCard and American Express, Waze. And I've been listening to these conversations. We're obviously halfway through. It's like Wednesday lunchtime, New York time. And, we've been talking, one of the speakers, there's a great trends person called Devon Powers. I don't know if any of you have her book on trend, but it's a fantastic book. And we had her on, and she reminded us that, trends are her statement was, trends are a roadmap to the future. Devon Powers. And she has a book called, with an O, Devon.
All right. She's not in The Bachelor. Anyway,
there's a lot to learn there. Like homepage, mate.
There we go. Temple University, this one.
She reminds us, so Devon Powers is she's probably the leading academic researcher when it comes to trends. Devon Powers.
Got it.
This wonderful book called On Trend, where she researched a whole bunch of people in the trends industry. And she said her point is like, trends are a roadmap to the future. At moments of crisis, she was telling us, everything gets accelerated, okay? But we can still, and all this change, all these trends and these ideas get accelerated, but trends still provide us a pathway to understand how to navigate these times. And so that's what I kind of took a lot from that. The reason we're on this call and the reason we kind of look and try to study trends is to help us point us in certain directions. Now, some of what we're seeing right now is a pretty big reset and a lot of destruction, but we've been talking about department stores and questioning why department stores exist for a while now. Yeah. And so it's horrible what's happening at Macy's, but the conversation was, how long can Macy's last? How long can these middle people last? And so I think
right, Piers, for 1 second. I mean, they were actually doomed before coronavirus, right? So this is like a catalyst for was supposed to happen before.
So I think what's happening with businesses, whether they're young or old, is, if you were I guess if you're providing a new utility, a new service, or something that is custom and adds value to somebody's life, those are the companies that should flourish. So I do believe that theme of personal utility still delivers. If you're a store with a bunch of different shopping shops and different merchandise, what was your competitive advantage anyway? Maybe you had this month's range, or you had an exclusive with somebody, but it's not really a long-term competitive advantage. And now there is no long-term; it's all been accelerated, and so we see these kind of changes. And then we had Philip Raub. You may have spoken about Beta. Beta is an electronics store, really interesting electronics store that is trying to kind of reinvent, obviously, the Best Buy, new storytelling, new ways of providing information to the customer, a feedback loop, a data feedback loop back to the manufacturers. So Philip Raub is this co-founder. He started the event on Monday, and he announced that he was stepping down as CEO. He's taking a total salary cut. All the leadership's taking a salary cut, and the item on the agenda is the cancellation or the closure of all his stores. And again, so which is really sad and really scary, this whole kind of disruption where you have a pioneering company also getting completely disrupted by the times we're in.
Yeah.
What I think he's going to do is he's going to rethink the model and rethink the relationship. And I think the other conversations that are happening are, so if you can't serve people in that space, but you are trusted as an electronic specialist, what else can you do as a brand? Mm-hmm. Obviously, you can deliver, you can do online sales, but if you have a reputation for storytelling and reputation for education, how do you transition that into kind of new tools, such as the way we are learning today on this call?
And what about in the store? Do you think there's going to be any type of technology that is going to measure health? Or, we've been talking about, these type of cameras that are in stores, and the future was supposed to be magic mirrors and sales associates telling you where knowing that you're a customer, and they're going to tell you that, oh, your red shirt's in, even though you didn't want your red shirt, right? And the experiences, is this health scare going to impact the way stores are going to connect with their consumers? And by the way, who knows?
So for the stores that remain, the stores that we want to shop in physically, which is a discussion all by itself. I think some of those ideas of the smart assistant, the connected shopper experience, remain kind of valuable tools that we need to invest in. We saw, and I think they can be used to consider the next age, the next stage. So, in China and a couple of other countries, maybe they're beginning to stop people and they're beginning to scan temperature before people walk into stores. I can't imagine.
It's called, sorry to interrupt, but it's called revenge shopping. That's the term that they're using.
Oh, well, they also do revenge shopping. So one thing is, I don't think Americans are going to want to line up outside a store to get heat checked, but I think there's a bunch of technology in stores that can do that already. There's infrared cameras, there's other cameras which can actually check a sick customer now, or check for signs of a sick customer. And then we have technology which can then tell a store associate or a specialist to intercept a member of staff or a cleaning team to follow a customer, or I don't know. We have a bunch of technologies around us to think about the store experience and to respond in real time to the store experience in the future, to make sure it's clean, it's full of hygiene, and things like that.
One last question before we move on, and then we're going to open it up to questions. You said it's a whole other conversation, but hopefully we can talk about it in a couple minutes or less. You said the stores that will survive. What are those? What's not going to survive?
Well, I think, right, you know, so we're all kind of buying online. So we're all doing the things that we knew we should be doing anyway. Like maybe we've resisted buying groceries, you know. We always wanted to kind of squeeze the avocado or something, yeah. And now, you know, we're doing that. Now, I think what's happening is hopefully some of us, many of us are also buying locally. And so we're putting these online orders to our local stores and things like that. But those stores then become different. Those stores become more delivery delivery centers or pickup centers rather than places to browse so much. So their models change. You know, that even those, you know, my little green market should now think, well, how would we become more of a kind of pickup center rather than just a place that you walk in with your basket?
Okay.
But that said,
how are they going to deliver them? Through drones in the future, so we don't have all this pollution?
I mean, what was interesting, so I'm sure many of you have done the same thing. So a couple of days ago, with my gloves on, I went to my healthy green market, and then I went to the supermarket, my food town. And with the health market, there was this sort of, I hate to use the word, like a Japanese gift-giving ceremony where they walked out the door, they put the box on the ground, they stepped back six feet, nodded or whatever, and then I kind of went forward, picked it up, nodded at them, went to my car, and but then in Food Town, there was none of that. The cashiers were still taking my credit card with their fingers and putting the card into the machines. So there was these different ceremonies that were beginning. I could just use that as a contrast, kind of look at the kind of ceremonies that could begin as a result of the crisis and how we interact with one another.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Piers. And if anybody has questions towards the end, towards Piers, just put it in the chat and we'll move forward. Thanks so much. And I hope people have some time to join you to learn more about the future of shopping and retail. Because as I said before, whether you're in retail or not, we all have to shop. So thanks, Piers. So I'm just going to go through this: brands, stinkers, or saviors, and always think about how you're connecting with your consumers. So actually, Edelman, the PR firm, or communications firm, you talked about utility peers, but they just did a recent trust index that basically said people really want, 71% said the companies that prioritize profits over people will lose their trust forever. So it's really important now not to push your businesses to people and your products. I don't know what happened to this one. We'll just move forward. Here we have a bad brand where Subway basically said that if you buy a sandwich, you'll get a free mask. Here's an example of, we talked last week about social distancing logos, like McDonald's, Volkswagen, and Audi are the new ones. Last week we talked about Mucinex and some others, but McDonald's is actually getting some backlash on social media saying, like, stop just putting all your money into reinventing your logo, and why don't you start using your resources to help people around the world. So Everlane has gotten a little bit of bad press, which, in Piers' world has been one of the most successful direct-to-consumer companies before the crisis. They actually didn't just do direct-to-consumer digitally, but they also were opening up stores, which was the only way that direct-to-consumer brands could actually survive moving forward. And now we have seen the opposite happening. But basically there have been stories around online basically saying that they were reassuring workers and that they would have their jobs and then laying them off. Now, I am a little skeptical sometimes because of Vice, but that is something that you know, is an example of a bad brand when something like that comes out. So again, you have to be really, really careful and loving and giving to your employees as opposed to lying to them. Airbnb, we talked last week about how they were going to insure and offer refunds for all guests who are renting through Airbnb, full refunds for their future travels. And the hosts actually were really pissed off because they were supposed to get this money for guaranteed vacation rental in the future. And they just came to the forefront. And obviously, you know, I love Airbnb. And I know many people who work there who are some of the most amazing people I know. And obviously they're troubled right now too, because of people not, you know, vacationing, going or traveling. But they actually just decided that they were going to partially refund the hosts and they're going to spend $250 million. So that's a good brand. Facebook is investing additional $100 million to support the news industry. And we just talked about before in the headwinds, how the news industry is even more challenged now. Johnson & Johnson is going to try and lead the vaccine. So there's another company that is using their resources to help us through this crisis. Twitter actually removes tweets by Brazil and Venezuela for violating their content rules of spreading the infodemic, as the World Health Organization calls it. The games industry, it's not loading right now, but the games industry is working to promote, here we go, Play a Part Together is promoting the World Health Organization. And now that gaming is up 76% since the coronavirus, they're really taking a stand to, you know, really help people, you know, with their morale right now. Tom Ford and Anna Wintour are creating a fashion rescue fund. The CFDA actually did this right after September 11th, and this is like a relaunch of that.
Wash, washy, wash, washy, wash, wash your hands. Scrub it while you sing this song. Wash, washy, wash, washy, wash, wash. Rub your hands and fingers and the places in between. Using soap and water makes your hands so clean. Wash your hands. Great job, you're almost done. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now dry.
Wash your hands for 20 seconds, just like Elmo.
I don't know, I thought that was cute. I'm not going to go through all the other examples, but ESPN, they're doing PSAs. NBC is doing a PSA with all their actors that are on their shows. Even Larry David did a PSA for the government of California and basically saying, don't go out of the house because as I taught you, nothing ever good happens when you leave the house. So that is the, we talked about NBC, blah, 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 blah. And then Burger King, here's an example of a brand moving forward. And tech, oh, right. So they did a social media basically created by a French, a French ad agency. Look at that. Keeps happening, but we'll move on. They basically, oh, here we go. So they basically have shown people how to make their own Whoppers at home. Now you would say, okay, that's fun, but are they really doing anything? They are doing something for, you know, morale and people love Burger King. But as the CEO or the CMO says, is that they actually have done so many things like giving kids free meals through apps and, you know, they're giving away things for kids who don't get their school lunches. So even though they're being playful, it's really important, he says, Fernando says, that before jumping on ads, brands need to take action. So I'm going to end there. I guess the one last thing about pop culture is that if you haven't saw Tiger King, then you're probably irrelevant right now. And the question is about a guy who illegally clones or raises like lions and tigers and sells them illegally. And I've been thinking about it. You could call me crazy, but I always look at the cultural subtext of things. And I was thinking about it, and I was wondering, like, why is this resonating? One, the character's fucking crazy, and that's funny. Two, I'm not going to say what happens at the end, but we root for people, whether it's for him or for bad. So you're like on this rooting journey of what he's doing. And third, I'm like, wildlife. What's going on with wildlife? One of the biggest conversations right now is about wildlife trading, because many people think that the coronavirus had been started through eating game and wildlife like bats and anteaters. So I'm wondering if that's a cultural subtext that is causing this to be, highly part of the conversation, cultural zeitgeist. But, that's just my old school cultural studies kind of stuff that I learned when I went to college. So I don't know. We have time for a couple questions. I'm happy to stay on. The last thing I'll just say is that next week, we are coming back. We're going to have another free class next week. As I have told you, I've been doing this for a year to scale what I do with clients. I've been using Zoom for a year through my culture class program, and I'm doing them for free during this time because we all need to stay connected and be part of a community, I believe. And if I could offer knowledge, clarity, and inspiration, that'll make me feel good. And I hope it helps you all too. But next week, is Sarah here?
Yes.
Hi, Sarah. I'm so excited you're going to be on our show or culture class next week. And Sarah is a digital strategist. I would call her an expert. She's worked for Facebook and Instagram, the Huffington Post, amongst others. And she just wrote an article for the Harvard Business Review. That's big time, Sarah, on what she's calling the digital campfire trend. Oh, I forgot a quotation mark. So excited. We'll talk to you next week about the evolution of social media and how that's changed. And you also know about all these other social media platforms that I never heard of. So excited to have you back.
We'll go deep. I'm excited.
We'll go deep. So next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Wednesday, April 8th, 2 p.m., 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can sign up at the same link to get the access code. Yeah, I'm super excited if you all come back next week. So we have a couple minutes if anybody wants to ask a question. I don't know, Piers, you're so slammed, so if you have to jump off, that's great, but I'm happy to stay for, a couple minutes if anybody wants to share ideas or ask some questions. I hope, thank you, Piers, for coming. I hope you learned something. And yeah. I see somebody waving his hand. I do know him, but I'm not going to play.
Hi, Piers. Can I ask a question about what you were talking about with in-store experiences and looking out for sick folks?
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you've heard of any large companies hiring technology ethicists when we come up with technological solutions for this kind of thing. I just assume that there will be a ton of privacy concerns about what are deemed public places and assessing people's illness from afar. I feel that would be very fraught and people would be really scared of that type of technology. Do you see people hiring ethical consultants to see about how to navigate that space?
I would. I think I can see right now what I'm is ideating and saying we seem to have the technology to be able to track people in store. Now there's huge discussion about the tracking of people in store, the matching of that data with your online shopping and stuff like that. And I think in some ways it's a continuation of that discussion, which is the whole privacy debate, which is just because you can identify me, does that mean you should identify me and should you react to me? However, I think the retail space is going to change. I was thinking about baby boomers. We all talk about how baby boomers have all the money, and arguably those are the people at most risk right now and probably will feel most risk going forwards. So how do you create retail experiences how do you make them feel safe? How do you talk, Brad was talking about the factory that's communicating a transparent story about how it's hygienic and clean and etc. How do you communicate the story about your store? Except, the story of most stores is that, hey, we disinfect it. Now, how can you take it to a higher level? So yes, I think there could be an ethicist, and B, I think there's just could be some transparency. This is what we do in our store, and creation of debate around that.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Let's see, is anybody for Piers? Oh no, that's Adam. All right, I think anybody else have a question? Oh, Piers, somebody asked if your presentations are recorded for your festival.
They are. How about I do it right now whilst we're talking? If that's okay. If you can wait with me 30 seconds, I have a link to a Google document. So this festival is very much, has been created very much just by myself and one other person, using Zoom and using Google spreadsheets and stuff like that. And we're lucky enough to have all these people kind of come and participate. And there is a URL that I'm just trying to find where I share. I think this, can I chat? Do you have chat here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think try that. If someone can just try that one time. And
By the way, I just want to say Adam McLean said that the social distance logos were a spoof. Not sure if you're right. But if you could kind of push back and put it in the chat. Yeah, so many. USA Today, CNN. So thanks for sharing that comment, but I don't think you're right, but I love you. Anyway, Piers.
I didn't make this. I didn't care much about those logos, but I just shared a thing on the chat, which I've lost.
You know what? I'll
just share it afterwards. But there's a link to a whole bunch of videos for all the people talking, and all the talks are free. So if you go to retailinnovationweek.com, we have a whole bunch of talks this afternoon. We have like 29 talks tomorrow with retail technologists, and then a whole bunch of sustainability and social impact talks on Friday. So just come along and put your name in the system and sign up.
I'm glad you said sustainability. If there's one thing that we need to keep learning and studying and be part of, it's the climate change conversation. Let's not push that conversation aside with this whole coronavirus thing. One thing that I did learn, though, is that if there has been a climate change crisis, so to speak, I just saw somebody on the chat, I got distracted. This is showing us that we can mobilize behind a crisis globally. So if we could do it for Corona, we're going to have to do it for climate change too. So anyway, I am so blessed that you're all here. Huge turnout this week. Thank you so much. I hope you join us for next week. I'm so excited that Sarah's joining us. So we have a theme of like social media, communications, connectivity, and community, and looking forward. And can't wait to see you all. Keep learning, as I always say, and I wish you all the best. Stay healthy, stay safe. And I really, really, really would love any feedback on brad@zeitguide.com. If you could spread the word, that would be amazing, because I hope that we can share this with other people. And I love you all.